Hey guys, welcome to chapter 15 of the Forgemaster Masterclass. In this chapter we're going to be moving on to texturing. We've done all our detailing, we've got all the bits and pieces that we need. So we're going to start painting this guy up. So, to start doing that we just need to select the correct material to start painting with. So I'm going to go over to the material selection, select skin shade 4. It's going to give us a white base to work on. So let's just go ahead and go onto solo mode, and I'm going to subdivide this guy up to his maximum level. I think that's about right. One more, and we're going to start putting down base tones. So with the draw brush selected, let's start doing that. If we go onto our standard brush, we can change this to a colour spray. And I'm just going to turn off any alphas for now. I just want to get an all over base coat. So I'm going to select sort of a skin tone-ish, something maybe with a bit of a pinky kind of hue to it. I'm going to be doing a few multiple passes on the skin to sort of build up a few layers. So I'm going to fill in with this. I'm going to turn off Z sub or Z add, whatever you got selected, and we're going to choose mRGB. That's going to allow us to paint with the material as well as the colour. I'm going to head up to colour and press fill object. I'm just going to hide this section here, bring this one out, and I'm going to dock my colour wheel over to the side. And now we're just going to start building up a few colour zones. So I want to have a bit of a bluish tone to him, because I say Vikings are going to live in coldish places, or at least I imagine this guy does. So let's just start giving him a base colour. I'm going to turn the RGB intensity sort of way down so I can build this up in sort of layers. And we're just going to start painting this over the surface, just to add a few hints of blue and things in there. I'm going to be doing that to different sections of his face entirely, as we're going to build up colour zones on his face. And we'll probably do the rest over his body as well, but just putting in a few hints of blue in here. So using the colour spray, or add in a few different hues and different areas of opacity for the colour that we're putting on. Don't want to go over the top with it, but let's just see what we can come up with. So that'll do, just putting a bit of blue hue in there. We're going to choose something a little bit warmer in the skin tone. So towards red, maybe a bit more fleshy. Just build this up in a few areas. Again, got a low RGB intensity on the brush. The skin is very rarely one uniform colour, so having variations in it always helps sell the effect. So I'm not bothering with the face at this point, as we'll be doing a lot more on that momentarily. Just adding some of the warmer tones just sort of around the folds in his skin. Alrighty, let's move on to the face a bit more. So just going to give sort of a rough all over tone. And then I'm going to start building this up in colour zones. So I'm going to select blue first of all. Going to go with the blue colour tone. Sort of just desaturated, but still quite intense. And we're going to sort of put this around the eye area. Again, I haven't got the Z intensity very high because we want to build this up in layers. ZBrush doesn't have a layer system for painting, but it is quite easy to get a nice effect going up if you build it up slowly. So the colour zones on the face usually has blue around the eyes and a little bit around sort of the lips. We're then going to go over to yellow. So we're going to get sort of a darkish yellow, sort of almost an off gold colour, and put that in the forehead. A little bit further down the nose, and also in the chin area. Going to go back to our reds and get quite a lightish red, almost a pink, and that's going to be sort of the centre of the face and the cheeks. So we've got a base colour zone down here. And that's roughly, if you've seen my poly painting tutorial before, which is one of my quick tutorials on my channel, check that out as I go into a bit more detail as to why these colour zones exist. It's actually natural in pretty much everybody. We can add a few bits of purple in, desaturated purple. There's a bit of a fade between some areas. And we're going to do a similar thing with the rest of the body. Now, so I'm doing this without symmetry on. You can turn symmetry on if you want, just to you know, make it a bit easier, a bit quicker. I tend to like doing it a bit more freehand. As we get more variation in there, it doesn't look obviously symmetrical then. Let's just move on to some warmer tones. Just going to pop them over the top. Bit of a slow process doing this, but it's kind of worth it when you get some nice undertones going. So putting the reds where we've got sort of a thicker mass of skin. Kind of emulate a little bit of subsurface scattering. So areas like the belly, some of the fleshier parts, so around the muscles. We'll get on to doing sort of the burn a little bit later on. Okay, so let's start sort of sorting out the rest of this. Start getting a few more, bit more sort of a skin-like look to it. You can see it is actually building up, though he is looking rather bruised and battered. So I'm going to add an all-over skin tone, and I'm going to do that just by selecting a warmer tone here, and just going to switch to RGB, and then I'm going to go to colour, and this is still with the Z intensity, the RGB intensity quite low. It's going to go to fill object, and that's going to apply a bit more of a skin tone to it, as you can see. So it's looking quite good on the body, don't need to do anything more there, but we did have a higher intensity of these colours on the face. So I'm going to sample this colour just by mousing over the colour that we want, and pressing C on the keyboard. I'm going to reduce the brush size, and I'm going to start sort of bringing that colour into these areas and blend them together. So mostly around the edges of where the colour zones meet, first of all, just to get them to blend. And then just kind of a really light base over the top. I really wish that brush would introduce a layer system for painting. If it already exists and I don't know where it is, I'd be greatly appreciated if someone could actually point that out. As far as I'm aware, it doesn't exist for the time being. It's a bit of a shame. Been thinking about maybe moving this process over to Mari, where layers and things actually work, and you can also paint directly onto the game model, so it might be a bit easier that way. But we'll see how things go. At the moment, just sticking with what I know so I can actually give you guys more accurate info. Just going to sample the colour from the cheeks and pass it on into the ears. And see, it's starting to look a lot more natural now. So what we can do is start fading these colours into each other. So just slowly layering them up on top using the RGB intensity. Just fading them into more of a normal skin tone, but trying to keep sort of a little bit of the hint of the colour underneath the surface. So I'm just sampling the colour from the cheeks, pulling it down into the jowls a bit. Just kind of mixing everything together. Just going to put a little bit more of a darker desaturated blue sort of around the eyes. Can start bringing them back out again. So we're getting there, slowly. Just kind of adding a bit of blue where I think it's really necessary. I think I'll just start sorting out a bit more of his body now. So I just sampled one of the warmer colours. And sort of painting in where I've got sort of large expanses of not a whole lot going on. We'll get inherent changes in the hue anyway, thanks to using the colour spray option. As you can see, we've got some fairly bland sections back here. Just kind of hinting at a few subtle changes in the skin tone. Going to go back to our darker blue. And pop that in over the elbows, or just below the elbows. Go back to our warm colour, a bit more red than that. Just put that over the top. It kind of fades into a blue. So we can start to put in a bit more colour into the areas where we've got skin folds and such. So we're not really putting in shadows, but we're putting in a bit of a colour difference, which enhances that area. Just going to grab more of a skin tone. maybe a bit more of a swarthy kind of look. Gonna do fill object. There we go, it's kind of made everything a little bit more subtle, giving them a bit more of a living, breathing kind of colour, rather than just looking a bit sort of corpse-like. Come in and paint it over a few different areas on the face. And really start to slowly build up this this kind of skin tone. Okay. So, I'm going to start adding in a few more sort of details to the skin tone now. So we're going to select an alpha, and we're going to select our either alpha 7, I think. Yep, we'll choose alpha 7. So that's going to give us a bit more of a splatter effect. If I paint over here, you can see you get more of a speckle. So we're going to continue building up the skin in the way that we have been. We're going to be switching between sort of warmer and cool colours. But the way that this brush is going to behave now is going to give sort of speckled appearances, which is going to help add different surface details. So you can start seeing that the skin starts looking a lot more natural, and we've got these tiny little bits and pieces of colour coming through. Let's just desaturate the blue and just put a bit more in around the eyes. Pretty good around the lips like that. Going to come in and smooth things out a little bit. So you can hold down Shift, right click, and turn off Z Add, and drop down the Z intensity, and this will allow us to smooth the poly paint. So it won't affect the mesh, but it'll affect the poly paint. We can use it to blend areas together. So we don't seem to have any yellow tones through the body. As I completely forgot to do that. So I'm going to do that now. Do that sort of areas where we've got bone close to the surface of the skin, so like the collarbones here for instance. Only very lightly. But it'll be enough for us to be able to see it. Probably not going to be many other places, as he doesn't have any other bones close to the surface of his skin. Possibly down the back. Just a bit. Probably too much, so just smooth that out. Just put it in wherever you think it sort of looks good. And we're going to grab our sort of warmer skin tone and carry on that down on the forearms. Especially in any other areas we may have missed, like sort of underneath the arms. Okay, I think we've got a lot of nice detail in the face here. So what we're going to start doing now is sort of enhancing essentially the wrinkles and things. Just going to sort of wipe out this little bit of yellow on his chin. Doesn't matter too much, as well, you know, we're going to be putting the beard on him anyway. painting on to fade things in a little bit more, add a bit more detail to his head. We kind of neglected that area a bit. Maybe add a bit of red in there just to add a bit of variation to the colour. Change the brush size up and down to vary the size of the dots that the alpha's putting on. Make it look a lot more natural. Maybe get a slightly warmer hue to it. So just using the paint to kind of bring out a few more of the subtle shapes that we have going on here. That's by putting in the crevices between the muscles. So with the hand painting we're going to get a very stylized look, just by the nature of what we're doing. You can make it sort of look more realistic, but I don't have any face scans or decent quality photos, as usually they're all locked behind paywalls as well, and I'm pretty skint right now. So I will probably be purchasing some face scans and things at a later date, but for the time being I can't afford it. So you could use photos as textures and just paint them on like that. Just put photos over the top and you get decent results. But we've done everything else by hand so far, we might as well do the rest. So that's looking a whole lot more sort of unified. So let's see. Let's start using the masking options to start bringing out some more details. So we're going to go to masking, and then we're going to go into mask by cavity. I'm going to turn the intensity up to anywhere between 80 and 100 and press mask by cavity. That's going to mask off all the sunken regions, so all the skin pores and stuff like that. I'm going to press invert mask and then turn off view mask so we can kind of see a bit more overall what we're doing. I'm going to go for a warmer tone, so of a darker red, and I'm going to start just lightly painting over the top using the same brush we've been using all this time. I'm just going to start putting this paint inside those crevices. So it's really going to enhance what we've got. You could do fill colour, but doing that you're going to end up with a uniform application of the colour all through it. Whereas we kind of want to do it by hand and just sort of pick out the main regions, even miss parts or altogether. So it's going to really bring out the wrinkles and all the pores and stuff that we put in. So notice it's already making him look a lot more realistic. The surface of his skin is broken up more. It's looking a whole lot more lumpy. It's bringing out the wrinkles and crevices pretty well. Remember, you can smooth it out as well. So if it starts getting bits that look far too sharp, just hold down shift and smooth it out. Right. It's starting to look a whole lot better. It's looking a lot more natural, and a bit more of discoloration in there. You can switch over to a blue as well and start sort of mixing it up a little bit. A little bit too over the top on his face. I'm just going to smooth them out once it's finished saving. I think I will just go ahead and put a few more hints of blue around his eyes though. So we're not quite photorealistic, but to be honest, we're not far from it. We'll be using a few more techniques in the texturing phase to sort of edit the textures using a few different types of maps that we can bake out. We'll be using X-Normal to do the map baking. Reason being, you've got a ton of maps that you can export from there. With ZBrush, you're kind of limited. So I think I'm just going to do nicely. I'm going to clear the mask. So just going to go clear. I'll clear the mask for us. Turn view mask on. We haven't got a mask. That's good. So with X-Normals, we'll be baking out a few different types of maps, one of which will be called a bent normal map. We won't be using it in its entirety, but we will use a few different, a couple of channels from it. So we'll use its, I think, blue and red channels, I think. And that'll give us a nice effect, which will help enhance the textures. Don't think blue lips work. Let's just kind of add a bit more of a flesh tone to them. Just remember, just build your layers up slowly, your layers of colour up slowly. You'll have more control over them, and you'll end up with a much more natural look. I'm just going to come in, add a bit more red around sort of the nares on his mouth, around his jawline, just to enhance them. Let's fade this yellow back into a bit more of a natural skin tone. Remember to just vary the size of your brush. We'll get different variations in the alpha as well. Okay, it's looking a whole lot more natural, so just going to put in a little bit of red around his neck. Probably a little bit too much. Just sample the skin colour and just layer it on over the top. And sample the warm colours again and sort of distribute them where we think areas need enhancing. Okay, let's see about this scar. So for this I'm going to turn off the colour dots, and I'm going to turn off the alpha. And I'm just going to select a very light pink. And I'm going to turn the intensity up, not too much, because I want to build it on top of the tones that we have underneath. And I'm just going to start popping this over the top, very lightly. Do the same thing for any other scars that are on your character. Just paint over the scar with this sort of light pink. Always use in different areas where you think you might want to enhance something a bit too. Okay, it's not looking too bad. So let's finish enhancing this. Once again, we're going to mask by cavity. We're then going to invert the mask, and we're also going to blur the mask and turn off view mask. And from here I'm going to take some slightly darker colours, less saturated but darker, and paint over, again lightly. It's going to add some subtle differences in the surface that the clay build brush left behind for us. Depending on how fresh that you want the scars, you might want to start like maybe adding some extra red in there. Old scars tend to fade, so the closer to your natural skin tone or white that you get them means the older that they are. So again, thanks to our underpainting there, we've got a few blue tones coming through, which is really quite nice. So I like that we get these sort of undulating surfaces as well. It's really nice and subtle, but it adds quite a lot. It's going to add a few sort of brighter red spots, not a whole lot. Remember, the RGB intensity of the brush is dragged quite low. So I'm just going to add a little bit of warmth into these areas. This one looks like quite deep, so maybe quite fresh. Just sort of slowly build up here the subtle tones on there. I think that'll do quite nicely. Let's clear the mask. There we go, so that looks pretty convincing. I was thinking of maybe putting some chest hair on him, but I don't know, I quite like the idea of maybe it's been burnt away that many times by, you know, embers and things that it probably doesn't have any anymore. So let's start putting these blemishes on as well. Just going to get sort of a dark desaturated brown. In fact, let's just take care of his nipples. So, a skin tone which would make sense with his current skin. And I don't think I'm going to bother with the nipples over this side, as it looks like it's probably been burnt off. So let's just go back and get a darker brown. And we'll start with these sort of moles and freckles and things. Vary up the colour every so often as well. You can see that already adds a lot of believability to the surface of the skin. There's some slightly different tones just to space them out, and so you're not always just seeing the same thing again and again. Can always sort of build up this sort of mottled look to them as well. It's actually looking quite realistic from this position, actually. You can always enhance that if you want to. Go into your materials panel, go to wax modifier and turn up the strength. Press OK and go to render. Go to render properties and turn on wax preview. And you see we actually get some subsurface scattering going on. It's only fake, but it can help, you know, sort of sell a skin surface. Won't have any effect on our textures or anything, but it can be nice to have while you're painting. Let's just go back to our colour palette. This might well be too bright, but it still works. come and do his scar on his face soon as well. Let's just get these tiny little blemishes in. We started them, we might as well finish them. You don't have to get them all, but at least hint at them. The normal map will do the rest for us, but like I say, we can always add them back in the texture if we wanted to. Cool. Okay, so we got a nice few blemishes on there. We've got some nice scars. Let's do the scar on his face. A blemish on his nose as well. You'd be surprised how much more convincing things look when you actually have those blemishes in. Okay, let's go ahead and grab our sort of pinky colour. Going to once again mask by cavity. Going to blur the mask. And we're going to invert it, I think. And we'll just start putting that in, just around the scar. Let's turn view mask off so we can see what we're doing. Probably a little bit too bright, so I'm just gonna fade that into a bit more of a normal skin tone. Going to invert the mask again, turn view mask off so I can start building up a few different layers. Going to go with slightly darker red just around the edges. See if we can emulate that sort of mottled look that we got down on the rest of the body. There we go. Let's clear the mask. Cool, quite happy with that. Yeah, I think that works. Kind of reminds me a bit of Kratos for some reason. I don't think it's that ugly. Okay, so let's turn sailor mode off. And we'll have to start sorting the rest out. So obviously the next step would be, a good choice would be the beard. So let's move on and do that. Now what kind of colour would I like his beard? Let's just go to M, select M only, so we can fill the object with the material. We can then go on to MRGB, or sorry, RGB rather. And I think I might have a look, see if we can do maybe just a greyish beard, a dark grey beard. So let's just make that a dark grey, almost black. I'm going to go to MRGB and click on Fill Object. Actually I'm going to turn the intensity all the way up for RGB. Fill Object. And going to drag that back down then. Just going to put the subdivision levels up. I might need one more on there, everything's a little bit on the blocky side, so subdivide again. What are we looking at on there? Yeah, one more. Get 2 million polys out of that. Yep, 2.1 million. Okay. So we could really do with a bit more detail sculpting on the beard, I think. But we'll see how we get on anyway. So let's just turn solo mode on. I'm going to mask by cavity. And I'm going to invert the mask and blur it. And I'm going to get a slightly darker shade of our colour and press fill object a couple of times because we changed the opacity on the RGB intensity. And turn view mask off. Press it one more time. Then I'm going to invert the mask and get a slightly lighter colour and press fill object. I'm going to remove the mask. I think we could do with maybe a little bit more detail on there perhaps. So let's just grab the Damien standard. Won't be doing too much, just want a few more creases and things. I think if we just turn off the poly paint to give us a bit of a hand and make it just off white. Turn the intensity down. A little bit more than that. Can't really see what I'm doing there, I'm just going to change the material. Oops. If we right click and choose hold down shift, then do Z add, and we'll disable the RGB so it can smooth things down. Just add a bit of surface to it. You can turn off symmetry if you want, but I'm not too bothered by the beard. Just adding a few little raised and lowered parts for hair. Going to be enhancing this with a few planes as well, with some sort of tufts of beard kind of sticking out. So I'm not going to be too fussed. Just wanted to get a little bit finer detail in here. Especially sort of around these areas. Don't want to spend too long doing this, as it's not the point of this chapter. I should have done it earlier on really, but just adding a little bit more surface detail to it. Switch between Z sub and Z add, just hold down Alt. And you can add some raised areas as well as some lowered ones as well. Cool, I think that'll pretty much do it. Don't want to go overboard, but I'll do fine. Okay, so let's just get back to doing our texturing. Let's just switch back to the skin shade and we'll turn on our colorize layer. We'll then go back to masking and we'll do mask by cavity. We'll invert the mask, and being so we got a bit more in there, we'll just kind of fill it again. So let's just switch back to a standard brush. Let's go on to RGB. Make sure the Z intensity is down a fair bit. There we go. Fill object. Let's turn view mask off so we can keep an eye on what's going on. And from here we're going to just paint on a bit of our own. So let's just clear the mask. Let's choose an alpha, something like possibly alpha 60. This might give us the effect that we want. Just affect the draw size and go with something a bit lighter. Let's turn the intensity up a bit more. Switch that over to freehand. So if we increase the brush size, see they're actually painting with sort of 3 prongs there. And if we go ahead and choose something like alpha 7 as well, we'll get some finer. It's still dotting it. If we take the lazy step down, we should get more straighter lines. And if we go ahead and choose a Damien standard brush and turn off Z sub and activate RGB, can go ahead and put some fine streaks in here as well. Maybe a little bit too big, smaller brush size. And turn the Z intensity down so we're not quite so bold with it. And a few white hairs in here. It's going to turn off symmetry, just get a little bit more asymmetrical in there. Just draw some hairs in there freehand, don't have to be too accurate. Add a few loose hairs in there as you go in. You can see I'm being extremely quick with this, I'm not really finessing anything. It's like, obviously it's quite a mass of beard, so the more layers that you put over the top of it, the more effective it's going to look. And with the RGB intensity brought down, we can go over the same area and just kind of build up layers of hair. Add a few wiggly ones in. There we go. Not a terribly unconvincing beard. So next thing we're going to move on to is the eyes. Now I think I'll probably be calling it for this chapter once we've done the eyes. I'm running out of time to actually record any more today. So just very quickly, we're going to get this earring done. I'm going to subdivide it one more time, or go up to the highest subdivision level, which should be fine. I'm going to show you a really quick way of just getting a texture on that's something that's meant to be metal. If we go on to solo mode, and we can select one of our metal textures. I'm going to go with like, it's one of Ralph Stumpf's textures. Sorry, matte caps. And it's got a very sort of dark metal appearance to it. If you change the colour to white, then we can get a really cool effect with this. Really quickly, if we just go into Zaplink, enable polygon colorize and press drop now. And we're just going to duplicate the shading layer, right click on the original and press merge down and press preserve. We're then going to go to file, save, jump back down into ZBrush, re-enter ZBrush and press pick up now. And do the same to the other side. Document, Zaplink, drop now, press update. Going to duplicate the shading layer, move that down below the original and press merge down, press preserve, file, save, back into ZBrush and press pick up now. Now if we switch over to the skin shade and select M and go color fill object, notice that it looks quite metallic. Not perfect in all places, but if we apply this again, go document, Zaplink, drop now, update, duplicate the shading layer, merge down, preserve, file save, back into ZBrush, pick up, and one more time probably from this side I think. Update, duplicate, merge down and preserve, file save, back into ZBrush, pick up now, switch over to skin shade, select M, color, fill object, and there we go, we get something fairly metallic like, with very little work. With a specular map on there, that'll look nice and shiny. Won't be perfect, but it's going to be a tiny detail which next to no one's really going to look closely at, so that's absolutely fine. So let's get these eyes done. If we just alt and click on the eyes to select them. If we go into solo mode, let's just get these subdivided. I think the pupils are around about the right size. So what I'm going to do first of all is, so I can get enough resolution on these, I'm only going to do one eye and then I'm going to mirror it over. So I'm going to, no actually I'll do both, it'll be fine. So let's just make sure we got enough resolution, definitely not. Subdivide a few more times, so Control D on the keyboard, 1.4 million, one more just to make sure. So we want quite a lot of resolution on the eyes, as the eyes are very important parts of the face. If you get them wrong, then they look really, really wrong. So I'm going to zap link, do drop now, press update, and I'm just going to drag in one of my eye textures. So it's an eye texture which I tend to like working with. I'm going to do select all, edit, copy, and paste. See, it's quite high res. So let's just go ahead and hit Control T. Turn the opacity down, see if we can get it in line with where we have the lump for the iris. So there's the lens, and that's around about the right size. Let's just see if we can if we put that onto normal mode and then go onto opacity. Yep, the shading matches up with that quite nicely. So let's put that back onto hard light. If I can find it. There we go. So from here we're going to turn the opacity of the eye back up. Don't worry about any glitching with the colours on here, it's just a result of the hard light, it's not going to affect anything. And from here we can just kind of put a layer underneath, just paint out. Let's just soften the brush. Turn the transfer mode on so I've got control over the opacity of it. I'm actually going to turn off the shading as it's affecting my colour picking. Just make sure that we cover up all the white. Any extra details we can repair in ZBrush. So I'm going to merge that layer down onto the new one we created just for the back painting. Do fit screen. And I'm going to duplicate that layer by dragging it onto the new layer button. Hit Control T. Going to flip horizontal, and I think I might even just rotate it around as well, just to get a bit of variation in there. Going to just hit the tick on there for now. Going to hit F so I can go to more of a full screen mode. Hold down space to navigate. And now I'm just going to once again make sure that this is positioned correctly, otherwise you end up with a boss-eyed kind of character. There we go, that'll do it. So let's just put that back onto hard light, turn the opacity back up. Going to merge these two layers together, then merge down and press preserve. Going to go File, Save, get out of full screen mode, back into ZBrush, re-enter, and then press Pick Up Now. Oh, it looks like the Z intensity wasn't quite correct. And it's decided to save while it was also doing the projection. That's clever of it. There we go. So if we go to our brush and put RGB intensity back up, we're just going to go to Documents and then Zap Link. In fact, I'm just going to switch over to Photoshop. I'm going to put a backfill on this layer, so I'm going to do a black background. I'm then going to merge down. I'm going to press select all, edit, oops, not crop, edit copy. I'm then going to head back into ZBrush and go to Document, Zap Link, turn off Fade and press Drop Now. Then we're going to update, and then we're going to do Control V and paste that over the top. Make sure it's still in line. Looks like it is, that's good. Then we're going to merge down and press Preserve. Go to File, Save, Minimize, Re-enter, Pick Up Now. That's better. So let's turn off solo mode. There we go. It's looking pretty good. Okay, so if I go into my materials library, I'm going to select an eye material. I'm going to press M and go Color, Fill Object. And now we've got pretty decent looking eyes. Cool. So that's something we can emulate in the game engine as well. So what have we got so far? We've got our Viking with a textured face, a textured body, textured beard, eyes, and an earring. And that's pretty much how we're going to carry on. Next we'll move on to his accessories, which should be a lot quicker, a lot easier. But that's all for today, folks, so I hope you've enjoyed that, learnt something useful, and I hope yours is going just as well. So in the meantime, you guys take care and happy sculpting.